Welcome to What Drives You. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, we're going to do a case study having my emotional intelligence test explained. So we're going to get literal and candid here. Patrick Kilcar, Dr. Kilcar, he again is the director of Georgetown University's Center for Personal Development. He was my guest 4 episodes ago where we talked at a higher level about emotional intelligence, and I've been talking about it throughout the week. In this episode, we're going to get granular on it. Patrick, he's a master trainer in emotional intelligence, and he actually certifies other professionals to use the EQI 2.0, which is rated as the most valid and reliable self-assessment of emotional intelligence. It assesses and evaluates the social and emotional competencies of individuals. So it's not something available to the public. Patrick, he uses it as a professor. He administers it for businesses and academic organizations, and he uses it with his personal counseling clients. So in this episode, he walks through mine. And as you'll hear, he's never done this in a public setting before, and he's kind of surprised that I was willing to do it. And for disclosure, you're not going to be hearing about how emotionally intelligent I am. You will hear how I'm, high in some areas, and then Patrick showcase how it's compensating for other areas where I'm really lacking. And however, though, you're not here to learn about me. The point is for you to gain understanding of your own emotional propensities. And this is why we're publicly sharing what would otherwise be an individual therapy session. Patrick's book, just to remind you, is called Leading an Emotionally Intelligent Life, Expanding Your Emotional Intelligence to Make Courageous Decisions and Transform Your Life. I highly recommend the book. Dr. Kilcar, Patrick, he also maintains a private practice if you're in Washington, D.C., and he does individuals, couples, group, and family therapy there. You can find more at his website, the EI, as in emotional intelligence, the EILife.com. And hey, when I'm not having these discussions on human potential, I'm working directly with people on their human potential. And thanks for all the people inquiring at the first of the year. I'm honored to connect with you. You can find me at kevinmiller.co. Here are a few sponsors. They help make the show possible. And then again, drive with myself, with Patrick, as we go through this case study on my emotional intelligence test. Let's see what we can all learn for ourselves today. Patrick, we did the first talk together on emotional intelligence on your book, and I think we were an hour and a half into it and hadn't even talked about my results. And I wanted to get into it. One, I'm happy to get counsel on my own, but I wanted people to hear what how it really plays out in real life.
Absolutely.
One question I had on this, and it's relevant with all personality type, if you want to call it a personality profile or a quiz.
Right.
I've done them for so long, for so many years, so many different ones. I struggle to just be authentic and to get out of my head somewhat. And it's that aspect of, do you give some percentage of leniency that it is self-reporting is my question.
Correct. Yeah. Look, anything that we do with self-reporting depends on our perspective, who we are, and how honest do we want to be. I had a young guy come and see me. He was sent to me by another school, and he came in to see me, and apparently very, very smart guy, kind of number one in his class. And he came in, and I asked him, I said, "Why are you here?" And he said, "Because some of the professors or the dean thinks I'm depressed." And I said, "Are you?" He goes, "No, I'm not." You could feel the depression with this guy. And so I gave him a couple of these assessments, depression assessments, like the Beck inventory. And on both, he was not depressed. And because he put down the answers that you always feel good, 5, which means all the time. So you won't really look. So, and I have this young guy in my book, and I believe he's the first story in the book.
Yeah.
And he comes and meets with me, and he said to me, I'm going to come back, but I can only meet for a half hour. I don't have enough time to do more than that. So we came, and we would meet for a half hour. After the 4th session, which is usually where I wait to give somebody the EQI if they want to take it, I said to him, "Would you take the EQI?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And I sent it to him and it came back, and it was very, very evident that this guy was depressed.
Hmm.
And he came in and sat in my office after it. And I said, can you tell me what's real here? Because the inventories you took about depression suggest you're not. The EQI kind of suggests you are. So where is it? And he said, when you offered for me to take the EQI, you said, listen, it's an instrument of hope.
Hmm.
And I'm taking you at your word that the hope that's coming out of this, that I will benefit from. And I said, okay. And this guy went on to really do wonderful things.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, because I looked at it and I thought, sometimes I have to catch myself and go, wait a minute. How do I experience that I really respond to this question, as opposed to how do I want to, how would I like to? Even different than, I wasn't worried about how I'm perceived in this one. I mean, I think that's one to guard against too. But it's tempting to respond how I want to be and not go, okay, yeah, but I really respond this way. So I needed to be aware. I kind of held myself in check to make sure it was an honest answer.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because people that take it, very, very few, I believe, ever take it and purposely try to deceive themselves. And in deceiving themselves, it may deceive me or others.
Yeah.
Because I say to people, look, you can be completely upfront. And I say to them exactly what you just said, Kevin. As you take it, how does this relate to where you are right now? Not how you want to be, not how you have been maybe, but the way you're living it out right now.
Yeah.
And that literally I say it to everybody. And generally they come back, okay, but there's always self-selection bias in a self-report measure. However, and if you took it today and then you took it a month from now, there may be some real deviation just without doing anything, without changing your understanding of these competencies or anything else. But that it's capturing, by and large, the way you respond to the world. How open your heart is, how flexible are you, how assertive are you? And it gives everybody a pretty good idea that moment to moment, day to day, they operate more like that. And then you kind of look at, well, what do these 15 competencies show you? What are they telling you? What's going on? And it's from there that, based on their history, based on how they feel about self, that's where hope really becomes an important ingredient within that conversation. And, for your audience, I want them to hear this because it's important. In all of my privileged years of using this instrument and working with people, no one has ever said, hey, publicly, I'd like to talk about it, so people can really understand what these competencies are about, so I can understand. And you said to me, let's just go through it live, with everybody listening. And I just thought, that's astounding to me. And so bravo for inviting other people to really not only see what are these competencies about, but what do you do with them? Yeah. I mean, and as you look at it, is this truly capturing Kevin Miller? Is this, when you look at it, do you say, this is pretty close? Or, no, I don't think of myself this way. And then we talk about it.
Well, the little bit that we talked in the first show about, in regards to assertiveness and independence and how those matched up was so, I was impressed. I really appreciated that. And want to know more. This is let's forget there's an audience. This is you and me. I want to know. I want insight. And if there's an area and go, gosh, that looks pretty good. That sounds pretty healthy. Great. But my improvement is going to come from finding what you see that you go, that's a little concerning, or I bet you're having this issue or this problem. That's what I'm here. I mean, it's like paying a therapist, man. I'm not paying to hear what I'm doing right. On me, at least not me. I want to see, what can I improve?
Right. So, and with your EQI, and I don't know if the audience is going to be able to see it or not, but you get a lot right, and you are very open. to go, okay, so if your EQI results say XYZ, and you go, you know what, I don't like X. I don't want that to be something that's part of my life. And I'll give you an example of that, where when I had, and I think I may have mentioned it to you, I'm not sure. However, when I had my first EQI feedback session, so this is years ago, the woman giving me the session is talking about assertiveness, and assertiveness was my highest score.
Mm-hmm.
It was really high. And in looking at it, I felt great. I said, hey, this is super. I'm an assertive guy. It's kind of what I want to be. And as she's talking to me, I begin to get more and more uncomfortable. And she goes, why are you getting so uncomfortable? And I said, well, I don't think this is going the way I think I want it to go.
Yeah.
She goes, how do you want it to go? Well, I want to know that assertiveness is a good thing, and not apparently a bad thing. She goes, no, assertiveness is a wonderful thing. It's just when you overutilize assertiveness that it becomes a bad thing, because you go from being assertive to being aggressive.
Yeah.
And that's the piece so yes, we can be low on some of these competencies. Like if I was low on assertiveness, what are the things I do to become more of an assertive person in the world? And if it's too high, how do I back that down so that I'm not stepping on people's toes, that I'm hearing where people are and not getting pissed off?
Well, and that's what I want to, and let's start from the top, because, there's one down here where I'm really high that I would have normally, without your input, have thought, that looks good. But then to see
Right.
that maybe it's high because I'm compensating for the area right above it, which is super low. So, but I won't jump the gun. It
Sure.
starts off, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primary areas and then sub areas under that. So the first one,
Right.
So, total EI, we can start right there. Total EI, total emotional intelligence. Mine is 101. Does
Right.
that tell you anything?
It says that by and large, you're happy in your own skin, that the way you live your life is pretty good. The sweet spot for an EQI would be around 110.
Okay.
Where they're all kind of operating these competencies in the way that you want. 100 is good. It speaks to self-awareness. It speaks to the way that you operate in the world and your awareness of it, though it can be stronger. And the piece so when you look at these, the competencies are these 15 attributes, characteristics, whatever, that we operate out of. And at the composites, so self-perception composite, let's say, which is the first one. Then underneath that, you have the composite, and underneath, which is like the umbrella, then you have these 3 competencies. And that the 3 competencies give us an idea of what's happening in your world. Now, self-perception composite for you, that self-regard, pretty strong, around, almost 100. Self-actualization, 122. Emotional self-awareness, 98. So, and we'll get down to it, but when you looked at these, not fully understanding what they're saying, but you're looking at this graph that gives you an idea if you're low or high or in the middle. What was your thinking? What is your thinking on it as you look at it,
Yeah.
you go through it, and especially us talking before about it?
I would have expected to be, if you said like 110 is like a good spot to be at, I would have expected to be lower. I have viewed myself as emotionally unintelligent in the past, but it's my area of focus now. So
Yes.
that it really, I think it probably would have been a lot lower a couple years ago, maybe even a year ago. And so to look at that, so self-perception composite. So under self-perception, we have self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. So I'm at 98 on self-regard, which is respecting oneself in confidence. So looking at that, I think I perceive myself as pretty confident. But what I realized in past years is that I did not respect myself. No boundaries
Right.
at all. I was a tool to get things done.
Yes.
So that makes sense that I'm a little lower on that. Emotional self-awareness, understanding own emotions. I'm honestly surprised it's even that high. I
Right.
would have expected it to be lower. And I almost, Patrick, question my answering if maybe I answered a little bit to what I wanted to be as opposed to what I really am in that. And then self-actualization, the pursuit of meaning and self-improvement, that being really high totally makes sense. I mean,
Right.
that's my fervent pursuit
Yes.
for sure.
And so when I look at this, and you and I talked about it previously, but when I look at, and for the audience, these are color coded. So self-perception and the three competencies are red. Self-expression composites, kind of a burned orange. So there's 5 categories, 5 different colors. When I look at it, what I begin to see is a story,
Yep.
is a narrative, because most people will just kind of go down, okay, this is my social responsibility score, or this is my optimism. But what I do is step back and look and go, okay, what is happening here? What is happening with Kevin? And so I look at it, and let's you and I try to walk the listeners through what this really looks like. But you're right. The self-actualization is much, much higher than self-regard or emotional self-awareness. And then you go from self-actualization. So that means that you're just moving at a fierce clip to get to what you want or what you think you want or what you need or what you think you need, personally and professionally. You're like a heat-seeking missile. Then you go down to independence. So that's in the self-expression composite category. And what's your score with independence?
118.
Right. Almost very close to that of self-actualization, right? When you have and again, compared to emotional expression and assertiveness, it's much, much higher, your independence score. So just based on that, having really high self-actualization and a very high independence score, what do you think just this piece is saying to you?
It's true. I'm primarily pursuing it autonomously.
Right.
That's my desire. To reach out is more difficult and more not as natural.
Yes. And before this is being taped, you and I were talking about an accident you had that really required a long healing time and rehab time. More importantly, what it did though was you had to rely on the people around you.
Yeah.
They had to take care of you because of the injuries. You couldn't do it yourself. I would imagine much of that time you were in apoplexy because you couldn't do for you, and that you're relying on these other people to get you through it, because that's not your MO. Your MO is you do it. And the independence piece being so high, what it suggests is, let's say that you have a team of 6 people that are directed toward doing a specific thing, creating something specific, having a specific outcome. They will give you their opinions about what they think as you're moving towards some kind of an outcome, developing a product, and they'll give you their ideas and strategies, and you'll hear it, but it will have nothing to do. Well, I'm sorry. It will have absolutely nothing to do with what they say. Because if you go to independence, you're not interested what other people are really saying about certain specific things, because you're so driven for a very specific outcome. So over time, those working with you, they get the message of, well, I might as well not say anything because he's not going to hear me or utilize my thoughts to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you just nailed me. Yeah, that has been my history with collaboration, partnerships. That has absolutely been my history. And now I'm doing one of 2 things: either just staying in my lane and staying autonomous, where I don't have to, I don't have to include someone else's stuff. Or if I come over there saying, okay, this is my propensity. So
right.
I'm going to need, I'm going to need some accountability with that. And you need to know that going in, that I struggle with this. And one of the things that I'm trying to improve on is trusting the process, trusting the counsel.
And trust and faith at that level, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Especially when you're so driven as a human being and you're so incredibly emotionally independent, the other piece that plays into this and reinforces what you're saying is you go down to decision-making composite, which is on our form is in green, and you look at reality testing. What's the score on reality testing?
115, really high.
Right, which is about 20 points higher than the other two competencies, problem solving and impulse control. And I remember I had somebody come in and see me. They did the EQI, they got the results, and they said, well, wait a minute, problem solving, it was like 75, which is very low. And he goes, I don't understand. Every day I'm problem solving. I'm a software engineer. That's all I do is solve problems. I said, yeah, but that's not the kind of problem solving that this is talking about. It's when you're angry or your particular emotions are flaring, what happens? Do you lose it? Do you shut down? Do you walk away? Do you step up and say, look, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on. It needs to stop. And he just looked at me and went, oh, okay. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, it's completely, because I looked at that and I thought problem solving, it's kind of low. I thought, no way. I'm king of the, I'm king, fix it, Superman, take care of everything. But if you're talking about my emotions, I shut down, I withdraw and isolate. That's my security run to.
You bet. And so if you look at reality testing within that, as you said at 115, these are your three highest: self-actualization, independence, and reality testing. And what reality testing is about, and they give you a little teeny blurb here, but you objectively see things as they are. Yes, you do. And I think you see things very accurately. What that does, though, it doesn't open you to sharing that with other people necessarily. What it does, it reinforces the independence or that need to be emotionally independent and self-actualization. So, I mean, those three things indicate that you're a man on a mission. To your point a moment ago, though, that you're that man on a mission, at some point, either it has or it would have, your wings will catch on fire. You can't sustain that. It's emotionally draining to do it. So you would reset or recharge and then go back and do it again.
Yeah, man, that what you said, what was it, wings on fire? I've gone to burnout so many times and burnt others out, and absolutely. I am aware of. You said man on a mission. I put the mission first, and then take people for granted. I've done that. That we're all just tools to get the mission done.
Completed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the piece is that, and I think it's a huge, incredible piece. The last competency in the stress management composite is optimism. And everything that you do in your life, no matter if you're feeling burned out, no matter where you are, you fully believe in what you're doing. You fully believe that what you do in all the corners of your life, certainly the podcast, as a dad of 9 kids, as a professional building other things, as a spouse, that you look at, all of these different pieces, and you believe if you stay with it, the outcome will be there that you want, emotionally, physically, whatever it may be. So that high optimism that, I can do this. And it's not so much we can do this, it's I can do this.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be interesting to, and just in these 3 areas, so you're kind of looking at the self-actualization piece, independence, reality testing, and optimism. If you were to begin to shift your way of thinking about the world, about independence, about the things that you are pursuing, have you ever truly pursued something? And this is an important question. Have you ever truly pursued something and literally failed?
Oh man, that's a hard. It depends on how you define failure, right?
Well, define it. So, failure in this regard would be you put everything that you can into it. All right. And for whatever reason, you just couldn't finish it. You burned out. And yet you left whatever it is hanging. Have you ever really failed?
Sure.
Give me one example if you can.
Gosh, we had a business. So my studio here is in a medical practice that I helped co-found. And I have a lot of nutritional supplement companies that want to advertise on the show. Well, we sell supplements here you know what? Well, yeah, I'll keep going with this. We sell supplements here. And so I decided, let's just sell our own. Instead of taking on other advertisers, just sell our own. And so we custom branded some, and I thought I was arrogant. I thought just on my own, I'm the host of the show. So if I say, hey, buy mine, it'll just kick butt.
Sure.
Well, it didn't. It's such a big decision for people. There's such a trust factor in the product and whatnot. It almost felt like it was less beneficial to have our own self-branded stuff than to just sell the already branded manufacturer aspect. And it was not a success right off the bat, and we just canned it. It wasn't. It's not worth the hassle.
Right. So here's the piece I'd like you to consider. That is actually not failure. That what you did is that you put into play something you really believed in, and that it sounds like intuitively, it felt like, I've got great listeners. These people are amazing. And when you step out into their lives, you do that with just such an enormous amount of gratitude. I feel it. I felt it the first 5 seconds we ever talked. Incredible gratitude that you bring to. It didn't work out, not because of you. It didn't work out because of lots of things that we can't understand until we do it. And so I bring up the failure piece because I would, if you and I were in Las Vegas right now, besides probably getting some weird freaking COVID strain, I would put everything I have on the board that you really have not failed, that you've learned. And I don't know if it was Thomas Edison or I think it was Edison that said, you know what, I can get 10,000 things wrong, but I only need to get the right thing right once.
Yeah.
And you are not afraid to try different things. And this is a good example. But if let's say you're doing a PhD program, you finish all the coursework, then now you're in the dissertation writing phase, okay? And that within it, you just say, I can't do this. I need more support, X, Y, Z. I've got to go work, and you don't do it. That might be more of a failure because it's directly based on your choice, all right, about you. The things that I think in your brain you see as a failure, they're not. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. That you had this vision of what you believed could happen, but once you do it, there's an element of control that you have to give up. All of us do. And the control, you put it together, build it, they will come. And in this case, you built it and they didn't.
Yeah.
And the only way that you could really know if that would be successful or not is to do exactly what you did. Try it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I have often promoted Patrick Lencioni. We've had him on the show a few times. And the last time I think we had him on, we talked about his book, Working Genius.
Yes.
And he's got this profile you go through, and that's his focal point, is to look at what is your working genius. Where is that aspect of your work out of 6 areas that you really come alive in, that energizes you? And mine, so I refer that, and a lot of people bought that. Mine is wonder. which is kind of like ideation, come up with a
Sure.
problem, a solution, and wonder how could we address that. And my second one is invention, coming up with a solution, at least a framework of that. But then you go down through the other pieces. My bottom one is tenacity, finishing.
Well, it's interesting that sometimes if you really believe that not finishing something held you back, your self-actualization score would be much lower. It's not, though. It's really high. And it suggests that you just don't let go of the rope. You stay with it, you go after it. And, both of those two things that you talked about from Patrick's book, they all come from this well of creativity. And that's the piece and creativity is not something that's intellectual. It's very, very much emotional. And your creativity has been loosened into the world through those two ports, which are, and they continue to be. It's not like it's over. But when you hear that, what do you think? Am I more accurate than not in terms of how you think about it? Or what are your thoughts?
Well, in the context of this, of talking about the EQ, I'm thinking that I have looked at that and I want to do what I do well. I don't want to do
what you don't
the stuff
do,
that
right.
drains me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really made me have to look in the mirror at my desire for autonomy. And so I'm kind of shifting to go, okay, what I do, I want to do on my own, but I do need other people I want other people involved who are strong in those other areas that I'm not. But I wanted my part. It's actually got me to look at collaboration differently.
Yes,
Patrick. Yeah. To look at,
absolutely.
Okay, if here's a project in collaboration is different roles. I want to take my role, but do it on my own. I don't want to do it alongside somebody else, whereas somebody else in their role may want to literally do it hand in hand with somebody else. So my collaborative piece is let me do my spot, my part,
right,
and have autonomy with it.
And if you look at the interpersonal composite, it speaks exactly to what you're saying. I mean, I'm not sure how you completely see this. Do you see yourself in the world more as an introvert or an extrovert?
Authentically an introvert, and I'll tell you how I define it. And it's because that's what gives me energy for the most part. To extrovert, which this doesn't feel like it to me. This is a conversation just with you, so this is not extroverting to me now. But to go out into a social group and to do that, I can extrovert as a verb.
Yes,
but I got kind of a limited time span. I'm ready to go, and
you're blowing through your energy really quickly.
Yeah.
The battery half-life is there's only so much. And however, that you look at that empathy, let me call it up. You look at the empathy score, not only empathy, but within interpersonal composite, there's interpersonal relationships, empathy, and social responsibility. They're all very close in the mid-90s. But when you look at this, what do you think, or what have you thought, if anything, about what is this suggesting to you?
Empathy. I struggle with empathy. Give me your thoughts around that as a part of emotional intelligence with empathy, because I've always looked at that, and I think we culturally look at it as that's somebody who's so compassionate. Oh my gosh, they totally feel what you feel, and they can understand that, and they can cry with you, and that's empathy. And so I've thought, I don't have that, I guess. I'm not very emotional. I don't connect in that way. And yet I read people, I think, very well. And if we're in a group or I'm with somebody and I'm reading their body language or their tone or whatnot, and I can see something's up. And a lot of times I can kind of discern what it is based on the conversation to think, they've been offended by something. They're embarrassed with something. They're actually, I think they're stressed for time and they're just wanting this to end. And so, really looking at that, and I've been led to believe that that's an aspect of empathy as well, that I feel like I feel you. And here's somebody who's supposed to be super empathetic. And I think they're not reading people at all. They're totally oblivious. But now if the person expresses something, they can really connect. And so it's a little bit gotten me unclear on what empathy actually is.
Yes, what a great question. Because most of what you just described about being an empathic person, being able to read people, delineate what's happening at the moment, facial expressions, and so forth, that's more coming from an intuitive space. This intuition about, wow, what's happening with this person, that you're able to connect with where people are, not so much in terms of empathy, but just, that I think that's one of your gifts, is to be able to really know where someone is and what's going on. The empathy piece is that you feel the person's pain, and but it's not sympathy. It's not like, oh man, Kevin, I'm so sorry. It's more being able to meet that person where they are emotionally, if they're sad or if they're hurt. That empathy allows us to do that. Now, to be clear, the area for me that I always have to think a lot about is also empathy. And because I get so caught up in things, and I have a tendency, for whatever reason, to be able to read people pretty well also. But let's say my son falls down and, he hurt his leg. I'm certainly going to help him, but I don't feel, oh my gosh, are you okay? Is your leg okay? I don't feel that. I feel more like an EMT coming on the scene, assessing what's happening, deal with it immediately, and then move on. And so for you, I think that this intuition and empathy, because you're in a place where empathy is okay. But what would it look like if you said, hey, Patrick, with all these competencies, I really want to increase empathy? What do you think that would look like?
I've felt like the core of it is getting in touch with my own emotions. That how can I understand and connect with somebody on theirs if I'm unaware of mine? And that's what it's felt like. It's felt like,
bingo.
Man, I feel like I know you're feeling something. I can sense it, but I don't know how to connect with you on that. I don't know. I struggled with that with compassion, that, gosh, I would want to be a compassionate person. And then to realize, well, I have no compassion. One, I don't really understand it. I don't have any compassion for myself. So until I can understand it for myself, I'm probably not going to be able to connect with somebody on theirs.
Yeah. And that you're just so right on. It's that whole notion, as a clinician, when I meet with people and people struggle with this notion of love, my girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever it is, partner, they're so emotive and they so kind of get me, and it feels nice. However, I don't feel the ability to give love the way that they do. I don't feel it. And then what I begin talking about is exactly what you just said. I said, well, if you think about this notion of self-love, what is it? If you were to truly love you, whoever that person is, how would it be different than now? What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would you see going on in your mind's eye about you? And I think to truly love others, we've got to be in a place of self-exploration where we love ourselves. And, your whole evolution as a person and what you bring through these podcasts, my sense is this. I'm a therapist or clinician or mental health person, not because I make other people feel good or move toward getting what they want in life. And I hope it does, and I hope they do. It's out of greed. It just makes me a better person, makes me a better dad, makes me a better husband, makes me a better friend. And I'm just, every day when I'm leaving work or wherever I am, I just feel this abiding gratitude for having the life I have and to always try to make it better. My sense is with your podcast and the people you bring on, they feed your soul. Now, nobody's necessarily seeing it, but you're feeling it. It's like this banquet, and you take it up, nourishes you, and that becomes yet now a part of who Kevin Miller is.
Absolutely. I mean, it's vitamins for my soul,
What a
is
great
what it is.
yes.
And to that degree, as we were looking at, just the concept of, I mean, call it what you want, self-improvement, personal development, self-help. I like to refer to it these days as human potential. That's what I'm interested in is human potential. And I feel like it's hope.
Yes.
It's hope. To me, it's hope. It's like, exploring the vast underwater or unknown lands or something, and the interest, we all are interested in that. And I feel like, gosh, that's us, that's me. And that the payoff is that it's all the things we want. The more I understand is the more joy, the more hope, and probably most often, well, I don't know, I was gonna say most is peace, but I almost really, as I think about it, just more fulfillment. I'm more
Yes.
fulfilled in the moment, looking out at right now the snowstorm out here, and just the joy in being alive right now in the moment has never been more than today. And I connect that mostly to understanding my emotions, my feelings, and not being a stranger in myself.
Yes. And what a great way to think about it. That I'm sure you've heard the American Indian folklore story about the two wolves. Have you heard
Uh,
it?
yeah.
Okay. And what you're talking about is the way you live your life is you're always feeding this wolf of hope with the idea of making this wolf of anger and hatred anorexic. And
Patrick, you know what? It's so interesting. Yeah, I know the story well, and I think most people have heard it. What's interesting when you said that? Here's the word picture that just came to mind.
mhm,
I'll let you play with it. You can analyze me with it. You ready? And it
yes,
was that the food is coming at me, and it's probably going to feed the bad wolf unless I divert it. And I feel like I am diverting it over into the good or the healthy wolf. If I don't, I fear that it's just the bad one's going to get fed. And so it's almost to keep it at bay. Now, that almost sounds anxious. I think I have been anxious. Today, I don't feel so much, but it does feel like if I don't proactively go out, just by nature, I'm probably going to feed the bad wolf. I'm probably going to fall to my appetites and my apathy. Go back to the wreck that we talked about. When I had that wreck, I realized that for the first time in my life, my motivation was less, because people thought, oh gosh, Kevin, well, he'll go after personal therapy and healing faster than anyone because that's who he is. I actually did the opposite. I was so incapacitated that it's like, if I can't be fully active, screw it. I was
right,
mad. I was like, this
absolutely,
sucks. And it really took my healing actually took longer. And then when I got to a point where I was able, then I did kick butt. Then I did jump into it. But meanwhile, though, I was watching myself going, huh. So if you're not full capacity, you're not okay, eh? That's
yes,
interesting.
wow. And for those in the audience and listening to hear that, um, from from what you just said, which is hinged into the accident that you had, what's your biggest takeaway from what you were just saying, about the recovery of it, about people around you, about you? I mean, how were you? You were angry, you were pissed off at certain times. How did you at that time see you? Meaning, did you blame you for trying to keep up with a national, um, you know,
National downhill champion.
right?
I'll credit myself that in the past I would have berated myself and felt a lot of shame. This time I almost felt just a little sad towards myself, because I recognized it and thought, yeah, I let my ego, I knew my head wasn't in the right place. And I'm at full tilt boogie going down this mountain, following a national champion. And I wasn't even enjoying it. I was letting my ego, because I'm Kevin, I'm one of the top guys mountain biking. And
Right,
so I looked at it later on, and I was just kind of sad. I don't even know if it was disappointment, Patrick.
right.
It was just kind of like, man, that's you need to learn. You need to learn.
Yes,
You'll learn from here on. Maybe that I thought I'll learn. And right now I'm going to sit here and suffer with it. That was one big lesson, and then the other one was realizing that, if I'm not really, no wonder I pursue some of this so fervently, because if I feel like I'm not capable, I really struggle with my own motivation. So it's so tied to my self-worth,
Yes.
that it almost brought me to, can I be okay not pursuing this stuff? So I've played with that, even though it's still my desire. So I'm still obviously doing it.
Right. And in this privileged chair that I sit as a therapist, it's always astounding to me that you have very talented, bright, loving people, and the messages they tell themselves constantly. Um, I mean, the book is loaded with a lot of these stories of parental neglect or parental verbal abuse, and that this woman came in to see me. She was a well-known cancer doctor, and I think a real healer. She had everything going for her in this world, and she had such a negative image of who she was. And that image was formed as a little one growing up with the parents always saying, "You're not enough."
Wow.
I mean, a brilliant person. You're not enough. You take things, so serious. Just all of these things, just putting her down and putting her down. And I had a buddy say to me once, much of our life, we're carrying around this backpack filled with crap that's not ours.
Yeah.
And then as adults, we spend a lot of our time reaching in and getting that stuff out and throwing it away. And it's tough. I mean, I think about different clients that I've had whose parents were just brutal.
Yeah.
And yet they turned out to be loving, incredible people who did not, or at that point, did not believe in themselves. No matter the victories, no matter
what you said, Patrick, the messages we tell ourselves, I am enamored with that. The meanings that we attach to things.
Yes.
That this, objective reality happened. But it in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's the meaning that we attach. And I have a friend, she was at the age of 11 sexually abused by her father. And she did what so many people did, is she attached the meaning that she is worthless and
Yes.
she is tainted and she is, blah, 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 all the stuff that and of course, what is the actual meaning? It had nothing to do with her. It means she had a broken father, unfortunately, so at best, or at worst, she was unlucky maybe to be there, but it didn't mean anything about her. But that's what we do, is we attach these meanings that you said is like these bags we carry around that aren't even ours to carry.
Right. But it's just the level, the power of words. Yeah. And in the book, I say, whoever said sticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt. We're dealing with a really small sample size, because what I've seen just remarkable human beings be just condensed into this somewhat of a shadow of themselves, not because of anything they've done. It's because it was foisted upon them, by broken people who happen to be their parents or relatives. And when people listen to your podcasts and you invite people in that really try to focus on healing, you offer them that hope for which they're feeding the wolf of hope, and that it's possible to be their best selves. But how do you get there?
It feels, back to what you said, the messages we tell ourselves. That could be the name of the podcast. At the end of the day, I don't know if there's anything more powerful. You talked about here's a successful lady. What'd you say? Cancer doc.
Yes.
And she's still suffering from being told she was not enough. Patrick, my suffering, which sounds so, it's going to be hard for people to even swallow that it was suffering, because it doesn't hardly feel like suffering to me, but I suffered myself by being told the opposite, that I'm the best. Yeah. You're the greatest. It's what you would think it's like the parent handbook to lift your kid up and support them and praise them. And I was told that. I embraced that so much as my identity that I imprisoned myself to have no limits, no excuses. You're Superman. It's a God complex. And I took that into my family to where I ultimately burnt myself out because I'm not Superman. I'm a dude who's got a lot of limitations that I finally figured out. And and even my parents, I look at it and go, I don't know that they did anything wrong. I attached meaning and said, this is who I am.
Right. So it's interesting if you allow what you're just saying to parallel the results of the EQI, that, that piece of independence being overutilized can become a problem.
Yeah.
It's being told you're flawless absolutely can become a problem, because then you go through a world that doesn't carry that same belief or doesn't reinforce that belief in you. And it throws you off balance. And, it's also that notion of emotional intelligence. It's not a destination we arrive at. I mean, we constantly are thinking about it. How do I increase being assertive? How do I be more inclusive of people, their thoughts, their ideas than I have been? It's this constant allowing ourselves to spin through how to be a better listener, a better person. And for me, the foundation is emotional intelligence. That's one way to think about it. But there are many lenses through which to look at self-discovery, enhancing our personal self-strength. There are lots of ways, and this is just one of them.
If again, back to the messages that we tell ourselves, I think that's a primary flag of emotional intelligence I'm trying to understand, is to see how I interpret the world through Kevin's eyes, through Kevin's experience. Yes. I interpret everything to where I now question, how much does the objective reality matter at all? What matters is how I interpret it. And then, and further to see, as we look at conflict with ourselves, with the world, whatever, that most of the time it's all about arguing about our interpretation. And it's just my interpretation. Same thing happens and you're going to see it a different way than I do. And if we don't understand that and make room for that, then we're going to argue about it or be offended by it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. So it's this piece of, what does it mean to respect other people around us that maybe share different ideas or thoughts or beliefs or whatever the case? And especially in our culture right now with Donald Trump coming back into the chair in a month or so. And respecting others, though, like you were saying before, it begins with respecting ourselves.
Yeah.
And just so many of us don't. It's shocking.
And here's a big focus of mine too, as we are, if you and I, and let's say a couple other people are in a room talking about something, you just mentioned politics and our views on that, and to see the level of threat that comes up and the arguments and whatnot, that I am more and more back to maybe empathy and emotional intelligence, sitting back and going, we're all sitting here triggered, threatened, whatever you want to call it, by some emotion that's down here. And I recently was reading David R. Hawkins' book, Letting Go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And he talks, I don't know if it's a scientific number, but to make his point, he was saying for every emotion, we probably have 1,000 thoughts up here. And we're going to sit here in the room and argue and debate all of our thoughts around down here. And down here is there's something that we're all feeling. Right. There's some core thing. There's some core emotion that oftentimes we're not aware of.
Correct.
But it's bubbling up. We're just doing our best to make sense of it. And if somebody doesn't understand how we're trying to make sense, that's a threat to our security. And we debate this. And I think that's where our culture is today and where I have been so much of my life, as opposed to coming down here and going, what am I feeling and why? Yes. Gosh, you just said that. And I'm feeling a little insecure. That's interesting. Why? What is it that you say? And to find out half the time, I don't know. And I got to get Brene Brown's book down and Atlas of the Heart and figure out, what am I? Humiliation. Apparently I'm feeling humiliated.
Man, that's brilliant.
Yeah. It's a discovery. It's an exploratory session.
Yeah, absolutely. You just can't say it any better than you just did, which I think is brilliant.
Well,
I've got to get ready to go.
Yeah.
However, I'd love to talk again, if at all possible, to kind of continue this because it feeds me. And
Yeah. It's as a gift. Thank you. I love that you just started off saying, as you look at our aspects of emotional intelligence, and this is why I want people to get the book and go through and understand where they are, it tells a story. And I want to know the story that I'm telling that I so often am not even aware of. I'm telling it to myself, and then I end up telling it to others. And if I'm not aware of it, God help us where it goes. So,
but you know what, and that's the beautiful part, Kevin. You are incredibly aware and always moving toward being that best or better version of who you are. That's what you do. That's why you have these podcasts. That's why you invite people in to talk about our own growth and pain and suffering and triumph. And that's what you're offering everybody that's listening.
well, thank you for being here and giving me more guidance. It's a gift, Patrick.
Look, you're amazing. Completely. You're great. I'll throw you a note.
Thanks so much for joining us on this drive. I am so grateful for Patrick Kilcar, Dr. Kilcar, who we focused with on emotional intelligence this entire week, these episodes. His book again, Leading an Emotionally Intelligent Life, expanding your emotional intelligence to make courageous decisions and transform your life. Again, Dr. Kilcar is in private practice if you're in Washington, D.C., and you can find out all he's got to offer on emotional intelligence at the EI is in emotional intelligence, the EILife.com. Got a question for myself or for Patrick? Let me know. I'll get it to him. You can connect with me at kevinmiller.co. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further, and most of all, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.